Time and again, when I hear evangelical Christians, preachers, and apologists talk about human beings, I find that quite consistently they have a very unbalanced theological anthropology or theological understanding of human beings. In particular, it's very one-sided, where they understand human beings to be evil and wicked without a counterbalance of a recognition, a full orb recognition of the Imago Dei, and that we're not actually just all evil. We have a mixture of good and evil within us. The wheat and tares together grow within us. And yes, we can do evil naturally, but we also do good naturally. And that should be appraised and lauded. And that if you don't have that element in your theological anthropology, you have what is functionally misanthropy or a denial of the goodness of human beings, even a hatred of human beings, which masquerades as piety. All of that was going through my mind when I watched this clip from Frank Turek.
Even us who are normal, we're not normal. We're all bent toward evil. We're all depraved. Every one of us are depraved. Nothing works perfectly, even the best of us. That's why we need a Savior. So, in fact, let me give you a little thought experiment. I can prove to you that you're abnormal, that you're evil right now. Here's my question. Suppose you were to, before you came over here tonight, you went into the bathroom to get ready and you looked in the mirror and you saw there was a sign attached to your head and it transmitted every single thought you had in big LED letters. You couldn't turn it off, you couldn't cover it. No matter where you went today, everybody would see your thoughts. Would you be sitting here right now? I wouldn't leave the bathroom because our thoughts are evil. We're bent toward evil. We're selfish. By the way, this is why no extra charge.
Okay, I think we get the picture. That's enough. So he claims human beings are just evil, we're just depraved, and the evidence for that is this thought experiment that if you could have the thoughts that are in your head on your forehead, then nobody would leave the bathroom. And that shows that we're evil. Well, actually, first of all, that doesn't show that we're just evil because a ton of our thoughts are neutral, a ton of our thoughts are good and praiseworthy and laudatory and kind and gentle, for the average person at least. But there's going to be some embarrassing thoughts mixed in there, some angry thoughts, some lustful thoughts, some thoughts that we don't want put on our forehead. And the fact is, I believe, that we disproportionately uh, look at it this way that if you get 10 compliments and one insult when you do a presentation in a classroom, for example, what's the comment that you're going to remember? It's going to be the insulting one, right? It's the same thing. If you have one ignoble, embarrassing thought on your forehead and you have 10 laudatory, praiseworthy, noble thoughts, the one you're going to be concerned about or thinking about is the one that's going to embarrass you, which would be the ignoble one. So that's why you don't want to leave the bathroom in this thought experiment. It's not because you're just all evil and depraved. It's because we're a mix of good and evil, and we are especially concerned about revealing that evil side of ourselves to others. And the interesting thing is, our very embarrassment about that fact, the fact that we wouldn't want to leave the bathroom, is further evidence of our general goodness. The fact that we would be embarrassed by that shows that we recognize the places where we are failing. Now, the reality is, we all have huge blind spots. Uh, Frank Turek, big MAGA supporter, I believe he's got some huge blind spots when it comes to his endorsement of Donald Trump and his support for that cruel man and for his cruel MAGA movement. I've got my own blind spots, no doubt, and I would tell you what they were, except that I'm blind to them. And we can recognize all of that. That doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of good along with the evil. So that if you have somebody telling you, you're just depraved, you're just evil, that is not a healthy or accurate view of human beings. And in fact, all it does is create psychologically unhealthy people who are struck with self-loathing. I've known some Christian traditions are bad at this. In other words, they have very unbalanced anthropologies that cultivate or encourage self-loathing in individuals as a sign of perverse piety. Some expressions of the Reformed or Calvinist tradition, for example, are particularly beset with this unhealthy unbalanced view of human beings, where you are just. I remember reading the poetry of Anne Bradstreet in university 30 years ago, and she would talk in her Puritan 17th century theology about human beings, being like mere worms. And then a century later, this infamous sermon, the most famous and infamous sermon ever preached on American soil from Jonathan Edwards, talking about human beings and our goodness as like a spider. Our goodness is like dropping a stone through a spider web that's hung over a furnace, and our sinfulness just goes through the straight the fire. Sorry, goes through the spider web of our good works and plunges us into the furnace below. And what that does is it just creates, again, a self-loathing, which is really born of a very unhealthy view of human beings. It's not piety. And again, as I believe I've shown with this thought experiment that Frank gives us, the experiment, if anything, works in the exact opposite to show that we give disproportionate emphasis out of embarrassment and shame to our very failures to fulfill what the moral law requires of us. And that is a sign of our goodness. So don't let evangelical apologists and evangelical preachers tell you you're just sinful and depraved and wicked and evil. We are a mixture of wheat and tares. We are a mixture of good and evil. And as the saying goes, I mean, you should feed, the one that wins out in you is the one you feed. You know that story about the two wolves within you. So feed the good wolf, feed the goodness within you, cultivate it, but don't let people think that just giving you a wholly unbalanced view of human beings is somehow a good or noble or healthy thing to do because it just is not.